Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode. I'm here today with Sall Grover, who's the creator of the Giggle App, which is a female-only app. And Sall, I'm so excited to get to talk to you today. The last time we spoke was several years ago, and a lot has happened since then. So I'm looking forward to getting some updates. And I know that you're involved with a big lawsuit right now. So for people who don't know, a man has taken Sall to court because he wants to be a part of this app. He wants to be included on an explicitly female-only app. And so he has decided that, he has the right to do this and to put you through all of this. So, Sall, before we kind of get into all of that, just let us know how you're doing. How is everything for you right now?
When we first started, like when the sort of litigation first started, so it's in terms of this case, it's been about 14, 15 months. But the whole process has been going on for over 2 years because it started as an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint. Then he filed in federal court because it wasn't resolved. And then he withdrew that and then he refiled. So it's been going on for sort of longer than what would be normal anyway. Like had the first case happened, it would have been finished by now. So it's been going on a really long time. And at the sort of last year, I said to my solicitor that 90% of the time I'm fine, but 10% of the time, I have a bit of a breakdown about it. And not long ago, I said to her, it's like, now I'm at 80% fine, 20%. I was like, and I don't want it to get lower than that because when I have a breakdown about it, it's a big breakdown. I get really, really depressed because it's psychologically hard to cope with basically being punished for just knowing the truth and just going I see a man, I know that's a man, everyone knows that's a man, and I'm acting accordingly. And so it's just hard to get your head around. But at the moment, I feel really great about it all. So I'm not in a depressed state about it, but I'm very excited for it to be over.
And when will it all be over? Do you know? Do you have an idea of that?
I don't know because so the hearing for the case is from the 9th to the 12th of April this year. So it's getting really close. A verdict could take for when the judge basically makes the decision. It could take a month, it could take 2 months, it could take 3 months. It just depends on how long it takes for him to do it. And then it's okay, so if we win in federal court, yay. Will the other side appeal to the High Court? Will it even be accepted? Would they be accepted to go to the High Court? For us, if we were to lose in federal court, we would definitely appeal. And so there could be another year on this. I don't know. There's a chance that the other side wouldn't appeal and that they might, or even if they did, or tried to, they might not be accepted because the High Court is a court of appeal. You have to be accepted. And it's basically an error in law situation. So, yeah, it's just whether that would even be allowed. So I have no idea how long I'm preparing for. In a sense, I've just prepared for it to go all the way. So I'm just so I will never be shocked. I've even mentally and emotionally prepared myself for a loss in federal court, just so that if it happens, I'm not devastated. Just no, okay, I've prepared for this. It's all good. But at the same time, I'm actually really optimistic. So I feel really good about where it's at.
Okay, that's good to hear. So April 9th through 10th, is that right?
April 9th through 12th, so 4 days.
9th through 12th. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the big event. And then unfortunately after that you can't even fully let out that sigh of relief because it could continue with appeals.
Yeah, I was so used to, on TV shows where in court cases or in movies where the judge just makes the decision in the room then. I grew up with Ally McBeal, so I just thought that judges just heard everything and went, okay, innocent or whatever. No, they go away and review everything and write up their judgment. So it can take quite a while. So yeah, that's going to be a stressful time, I think, when, you know, all the evidence has been put out, you've argued the case, and then you just have to wait. This whole thing has been a big test in patience for me, because I'm not like a patient person usually. Like, I was born 10 weeks early. I was like, I always say I was born impatient. So
Ready
having
to
to
go.
learn, yeah, to learn to just, you know, just wait. And then you go like, what am I waiting for? This is so absurd. I'm waiting to potentially be told this man is a woman, but he's not. And we're in
Right.
this
Right.
court where evidence and truth is supposed to matter. Or at least that's how I've always thought it was.
Yeah. It's mind
And
blowing.
yeah, so it's just it is just very hard to, yeah, cope with on that level.
And the app is not currently running right now,
Mm.
right?
No, the app hasn't been running for a while. It will be eventually again. We have to just wait until this is over. I mean, there is no reality where I'm launching an app that men are included in. That's not happening, because what's the point of it? Like, congratulations to me, I've invented Twitter. Just
Mhm.
there are currently 14 apps on the App Store and Google Play exclusive for trans people. Then you've also got the ones that are like LGBTQ plus specific. There's many social networks for this demographic of people. And I'm like, fine, there should be. Okay. I think that there should be like apps and like groups or whatever available to anyone who wants anything, like specific for that. I just want there to be at least one, like have more competition. That's fine. That's just for females. And the fact that this is even controversial, like, I don't know if you saw in the UK in the last few days, it was announced that some trans people, I say trans because I don't even think this is a thing anymore, but I don't know too much about it, but just for sake of speech, I'll just say it, that a group of trans people have created a trans only, like, domestic violence and I think rape shelter. And it's like, obviously, perfect world, no one needs any of these things, because it'd be great if these problems didn't exist, but they do. And great, like, but then we should also be able to have women only ones. Like, that's all we're asking for. And it's just like, if you just create the things that a demographic needs, that is actual inclusion and diversity, just in the marketplace, in the world of everyone having a choice of where they can go and having something available to them. And just to be taking that away from women seems to be just so unnecessarily cruel. This is
Yeah.
what we should be doing with
And
our
we're half
time
the
instead of this.
population. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're half the population. So it's like, for them to have their own, I didn't know about that there's a trans only domestic violence or rape crisis shelter, but it's like, well, a lot of the initial clash between feminists and trans rights activists was over rape crisis shelters. And so for them to have their own, it's like, okay, that's great. So can you now understand why women would want their own as well?
Yeah.
But that never
Because
seems to
the
come across.
problems that you're going to be dealing with for those demographics are actually very different.
Yeah.
And so it's better to go to a place that actually can cater to your specific situation. You're going to get better care. So I think it's just great. One of the things, like, sort of, you see there's a lot of men who, that laugh at women, and they're like, oh, well, you took away male only spaces, so ha ha ha. And I just think that is the stupidest argument I've ever heard. I don't even think it's an argument, because, like, women were actually right to dismantle the few male only spaces that there were where the power was being hoarded, like governments and boardrooms and things like that. And there was some male only clubs as well, where, again, the decisions for society were being made in those places. It was completely right for women to dismantle them for equality in society. However, in now this modern age, if men want male only spaces for, like, recreation and connection and things like that, there's a lot of positivity from men being in environments where they can talk to each other and you know, be honest and have relationships or whatever, and whatever topics of discussion they have, like, create them. It's not women's responsibility. If you want them, create them. And so it's like, if they're not available to you now, that's really on you. I
Yeah.
would argue that it's very easy to create a male only space in one sense, and even like beyond, like, legally, because you can just make it sort of intimidating, and women then self-exclude from it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of male only gyms because of that, because they're just quite, like, they sort of have that industrial look, and it's the really loud sort of angry music playing, and then really big men lifting really big weights, and a woman's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like, I don't want to go near there. Whereas when you create something that's just for women, it actually, like, in sort of a lot of, there's a certain type of men that takes that as like an invitation or a challenge of, like, suddenly they want to go into that space purely because it's woman only. So yeah, I just think, like, create all these different things in society. We live in this colorful world together. It's fine to have a refuge to go and be with your people. Like,
Yeah. And so for people who don't know, what is the Giggle app for? You know, what was the original impetus for starting it?
so when the very initial idea was actually just going to be a roommates app, and then
Okay.
that's just like the first conversation, and so, like, literally within days we had expanded the idea. But it was basically, we just had this idea of kind of like just a one-stop shop, in a sense of, like, one place, little corner of the internet where women could go to find roommates, to give and get freelance work. Because I, like, in my sort of past life, I was a freelance writer, and I'd done lots of, like, using lots of different platforms for freelance work. And I'd had lots of situations of men being really, really creepy and women always being really, really lovely. And so I was just like, oh, to just be able to just go somewhere where it's just women would be really nice. It was also just, we had places where it's just that you could connect just, like, for more, like, emotional support. There was lesbian dating on there. Then there was, like, a forum, like a Twitter style feed that was female only. Just so everything was female only. But yeah, it was lots of different things. And, like, when we eventually relaunch it, like, it will be that as well. Only better, when we relaunch it eventually, it will actually be available on computer as well as phone, which is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just wanted it to be a place where women could connect really for any reason that they wanted. Like, we tried to think of as many reasons why and create the infrastructure for it. And then also there was freedom where women could sort of invent, like, if there was something specific we hadn't covered. And talk privately or publicly and build relationships that you could build friendships, whatever you would want it for. If you just needed to have some fun, or you needed, like, to vent, or yeah, just have some support. And I mean, we never even really properly launched it, because basically when we were doing beta testing, the trans activists found it, and that's how I was introduced to them. I didn't even know there was such a thing as trans activists.
So tell us about that. So what was that like? Were you just like, what is going on here? Like, we're suddenly getting all these men in wigs who want to be a part of this?
I mean, it wasn't even men in wigs. Like, it was
Okay.
just men.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't tell that they're, like, that they have an identity or whatever. It's just men. They So I woke up on, it was the 7th of February, and I mean, we were, and the security settings hadn't all been done. We were just testing it. Like, there was a handful of women around the world who knew that this app existed, and they were creating, like, rape turfs and kill turf profiles, and leaving leaving 1-star reviews on the App Store and Google Play saying transphobic and this is so bad. And I'd never heard the word turf before. I don't actually even really think I'd heard the word transphobic before. I gathered what it was straight away, but well, in a sense, because when you actually find out what transphobia really means, so it was like, we were in a panic. My mum was just, like, having a nervous breakdown, because both of us were actually really non-confrontational people. I've never been someone who's been sort of accused of anything or called anything negative before. I've never acted that way in my life. So I just really quickly was like, I want to learn what's going on. And it was over a few months of learning, like within a few days, like I'd worked it out, like sort of the core of it really quickly, that like they were saying men are actually women and this is a nightmare. And basically like they're saying people can actually change sex, and like we're in the midst of a mass delusion here. That I was quick to work all of that out. And I also, because I remember the earliest things I saw was, they were saying that these men are actually lesbians. This just seems like this is just like rape. I just, I was like, this is like just the worst coercion you could think of. And I also saw that they were going after like women who wanted to end female genital mutilation because they were using word like, like because of the language they were using, like female and mutilation. And it just, it's like, what do you mean you're going after these women? I couldn't get my head around it, and to a point I still can't. And so I started to just listen to and watch everything and read everything. And it was Kelly J. Keane who was the one, that trigonometry interview that she did. I must have watched that. Like it's been watched now about 1.4 million times or something. I think I'm like 1.3 million of them, because I would just sit there constantly because she was so clear. It wasn't, I started to get really annoyed with a lot of like sort of the academic theory, because I was like, this isn't getting to like the core of the issue, where she just did, it was just so normal. It was just like, no, they're men, language matters, reality matters, end of story. So yeah, it's that simple. There's no other, there's nothing really more to say about it. And then when J.K. Rowling did her essay, that sort of gave me the confidence to speak up. And I really started to speak up about it, because in terms of what the company was being lied about. No one would speak to me. We'd planned, like for the launch, we planned all this different media to speak to us. No one, I mean, to this day, they've never responded to any emails from me. The ones
and
who were
that shift happened when, that shift
the
happened.
moment we were called transphobic.
Mm-hmm.
Just the accusation. So you get no right of reply with that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Of like, well, maybe you're not. But one of the things that's been always very interesting to me, in the fact that media wouldn't speak to me, and that, basically the accusations of transphobia were taken seriously. It's like females with a trans identity were welcome on the app, always have been. Why is no one thinking about them? Actually, very trans inclusive, so long as you're female. It's just that the app is sex-based. That's it. There's no thought control on there. You can think whatever you want. You could even be a woman who thinks men are women and be on the app saying that. So long as you're having respectful conversations, like obviously you just have normal rules, like everything, like you, no harassment or abuse or anything, but you can express your opinion. So it was just the only prerequisite to use this platform was be a woman. So all of those, the media or anyone who has gone after us and being negative about it, they're men's rights activists. What they're angry about is that men can't use it, which by definition, of course, they can't. So, but then they were fine with that until it was men who think they're women were sort of made the center of it. And now apparently, like, they have to be the center of my world. You go and try and do something for women, and suddenly all you're thinking about and talking about is men.
Right. That's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
The lawsuit is called Tickle v. Giggle. And this guy's name is Tickle? Is that his real name?
No, that is genuinely his last name, yeah. And
wow.
I've sort of defend him on this point. I mean, we don't get to choose our last names. And my last name is Grover. Like, it's like Grover is a Sesame Street character. Like, this whole thing just sort of sounds like a puppet show. But yeah, the case is Tickle. Just, I used to be a screenwriter, and if I'd written a movie about all of this stuff, and then made the central court case Tickle v. Giggle, the first script note I would have gotten is, that is too unbelievable.
Right, it's too crazy.
Far too on the nose. Like, no one's going to accept that. But this is the world that we live in. So basically, this guy, he did get on the app. So one thing that I will just explain, to make the app female only, we had to have a process for that, because otherwise men would just go into it. So it was always the thing, how do we make this female only? And there is AI software, basically. I didn't invent it. It was just, it was a thing you could license and use, that just based on a picture can tell if someone's male or female, like the good old fashioned human eye can. And so we just used that as essentially like an aid in us keeping it female only. It wasn't like the be all and end all. So a human was always behind the screen watching the onboarding, making sure it was working as it should or correcting anything that was wrong. And we had it set to 94% accuracy because we found that it didn't stop women from going on. And maybe occasionally a man would get through, but our thought was we'd rather one man get through occasionally and we just manually remove him than women being denied. Whether that was the right way to go about it, I don't know, but that was the decision we made. And so this guy did get on. And then I don't remember removing him because it was not an event to remove him. We removed guys all the time. And then just even how many men would just see that were getting rejected that would try to get on. Like some days it would be thousands. So Everything was working. It was actually working properly. But yeah, occasionally a guy would get through. There's one man I remember removing, and that is because he is the biggest venture capitalist in Australia who was sort of curious about like what we were doing as a startup. And he got past, and I was so mortified that basically this thing had, in his eyes, failed. And when you're sort of, when just a venture capitalist is looking, they're just looking at, does everything work? So I was so embarrassed, and I just removed him straight away. But so that is the only guy I actually have a memory of because it was a unique situation. But this particular guy, I literally have no memory, but just in the time when it happened, it would have been me who removed him. And, just that's a normal day at the office. And then at some point, like a little while later, he called and texted my phone. And that's the moment he became a person of note in my life. I didn't know who Roxy Tickle was before that. And when he called and texted my phone, like I checked on the server, like I had a look and I saw that he'd already been blocked. And I just looked at the thing. I was like, that's a man. And I called my dad and I said, what should I do? And he said, block his phone number and don't tell your mum, because my mum sees the threats that all women get from this and she lives in a bit of fear. And so that's what I did. I just blocked him. I just didn't think about it again. And then about 2 months later, I got the Australian Human Rights complaint that basically he filed a complaint in the Australian Human Rights Commission for gender identity discrimination. And how the Australian Human Rights Commission works, like when you have a complaint, is they're basically like a body where to try and resolve something before it goes to court. But for me to resolve this, they were saying I would have to let him on the app, let all men who claim to be women on the app, go to sex and gender education, and moderate the content so that men who claim to be women aren't offended by it. And I was like, well, no. And the Australian Human Rights Commission was they basically just treated me as guilty and that I had done something wrong from day dot. And I was like, but I haven't done anything wrong. And we do have a Sex Discrimination Act, like that was once upon a time very normal. And we'll get to why it's not now. But I was just like, no, I actually haven't done anything wrong. And I'm not agreeing to those terms because this man is not a woman. And so I said no to basically going to conciliation. Also, so when I got the complaint, I was 15 weeks pregnant. By the time, like going back and forth, like I had a solicitor at this point, going back and forth with them, I would have been by the sort of, I would have been maybe the end of second trimester, beginning of third. So I'm not putting myself through this. Also, I was like, if we're going to talk about lived experience or anything, you're going to tell me that this person was assigned male at birth or whatnot. No, I just had a 20-week scan and was told the sex of my baby. before she's even born. So I'm like, I'm just, no, my lived experience means something as well. And mine is actually the truth. And I'm not, playing into this bullshit. So I said no to conciliation. He then, basically, if it's not resolved at the AHRC, they can advise the applicant of what to do, which they did. They then have 60 days to file in federal court. We did it on the 60th day. So it became a gender identity discrimination charge in federal court. So I got a barrister and solicitor straight away. We were preparing to do the first response to it, and he withdrew. And so we were just like, we didn't know why or anything. We were just like, okay, we'll take that as a win. We stood our ground. And then 6 months later, he refiled again on that same complaint. So he just basically refiled the same court case, and he claims that he withdrew because he just was worried about the cost of it. He got a grant from some place, refiled again. The judge then it had to be a situation where the court would allow it to go ahead because of that 60 days. So he was essentially out of time to do it. He was like 200 and something days out of time. But the judge allowed it to go ahead basically because the case is in the public interest.
In the public interest. So is the judge biased in this case?
I wouldn't say so. No, I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, it could be in the public interest even in the other direction, like for women?
I mean, I would argue it is in the public interest for this issue to be resolved.
Yeah.
And so what has happened now, so in the is the Australian Human Rights Commission has intervened in the case as amicus curiae, which means friend of the court. They are in no way a friend of mine. They are there to interpret the law. Now, they intervened basically saying, look, there is a conflict here and it needs to be resolved, and then proceeded to resolve it in his favour. So my instinct has always been that the Australian Human Rights Commission has never once considered my human rights, and by extension, the human rights of all women and anyone, like men or women, who doesn't believe in gender ideology. It's like it's just never even occurred to them. And every action they've taken, I've been proven right on this instinct. So they have intervened, and basically, you can go to the federal court website and type in Tickle v. Giggle, and you can read the AHRC's submissions into it. I recommend people doing it. It's literally like reading a draft of 1984 that even Orwell went, this is too batshit. But the Australian Human Rights Commission went, let's implement it. It's so insane. They say things like, human beings can change sex. Sex is not limited to male and female, nor is sex binary. And obviously that is just absolute nonsense. What they're trying to do is create this concept of legal sex, and that legal sex is different to biological sex, which wouldn't be for most people. It would be just what your biological sex is. But then for the small amount of people that it was different, it would actually be the opposite. They even say that being a man desiring to be pregnant is sufficient for him to be considered a woman in law. Like it's like absolute nonsense.
That's
terrifying
creepy.
Nonsense. Yeah, it's really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically the AHRC is all in on this. So in a sense, it's like, well, it is still Tickle v. Giggle, but it is Giggle versus the government in a way, because this is a government institution who is really pushing all of this stuff. And there is a way to interpret the Sex Discrimination Act and the law that they're interpreting where it's actually just all sex-based. Like, it's not like they're right on this. It's that the law is so muddled. And why Australian law is muddled is in 2013, under Julia Gillard, our first and only female Prime Minister, who was dined out on that fact for over 10 years, her government brought in these amendments, or happened under her government, where basically the definition of sex, man and woman, were taken out of the Sex Discrimination Act and gender identity was put in. So it just muddled the whole document. Because before then, there was no need to get exemptions for female-only spaces. Like, the Sex Discrimination Act was the exemption, like that. It existed so we could do all of these things, and it was necessary. So it worked Perfectly fine. Now it is just this like mumbo jumbo, no one knows what's going on. And it's not like for the last 10 years or 11 years now that it's been fine and no one's had a problem with this. Women have been intimidated constantly. It's just that we fought back. We just said no. But lots and lots of places, I've talked to lots of women who were just petrified about it. I don't feel like I'm special or anything in fighting back. I just felt like I had no choice because it would just like destroy my life and what I was working for and what I wanted to do and what I think is important and the truth of the matter. And I just couldn't say no.
Mm-hmm.
Or say yes or however. Yeah, I just couldn't accept it.
Right.
So basically, yeah, that's where we're at with everything.
Wow, it's unbelievable, and it must be really stressful for you dealing with all of that. And what has it been like in terms of, like you mentioned, women have just been silenced by this and not able to fight back. What has it been like for you in terms of other women in Australia or around the world just coming to you with their stories? What kind of things have you heard or learned?
Oh, that's been one of the craziest things. Like my mom and I talk about it all the time, that we didn't even realize how much a female-only space was needed, like an online female-only space, when we created it to what we know now. It just, my mind gets blown every single day. And sometimes in really positive ways when women come to you with like the really great stories. And then other times your heart absolutely breaks because a woman, for what the reason why a woman wants a female-only space. Like some of the things that women go through, like how they survive through this. It's just I can't fathom it. But in Australia, there is a it's close to a total censorship on this issue, on sort of from our side of it, that you could have. Every now and then, like we've got Sky News, which is a conservative news platform. They'll do some things about it. They're pretty weak overall, I would say, but they're the best we've got. And the Australian newspaper occasionally does some stuff, but every time they write an article about it, they get something wrong in it. And I'm like, can you guys sit down and learn what the issue is, please? Because like, it's irresponsible at this point. But otherwise, there's no other media. So like our ABC, which is our like equivalent of like BBC, they don't do any stories about the other side of this. So if you only read and watch the ABC, you have no concept that there is pushback or that there is a problem. You're just hearing all of these stories. I think they did one the other day about this non-binary female. So this woman who calls herself non-binary, and that she's like, she gets misgendered because she has big boobs.
Oh my God.
Fuck my life. And it's just like, you're just female. And people just know you're female. And human beings have evolved to recognize sex very quickly. Like it's not even it doesn't even take a full second to recognize sex. So just utter nonsense. But in terms of the Tickle v. Giggle case, I cannot get Australian media to talk about it. And, the judge allowed this case to go ahead and be heard because it's in the public interest. And then it's like the fourth estate has then decided, well, we're going to make sure the public doesn't know about it. And I have a lot of theories as to why that is. My first one is, I am blatantly right. Men aren't women. You can't change sex. They know I'm right. I don't think they want people to know what the truth actually is, and that there is, a significant pushback, and that the arguments for the pushback are the stronger ones. They really need a censorship on that for this narrative of gender identity to continue. Also, there is this story not just in Australia, it's in the world, that this is a marginalized, oppressed group. They don't want people to know that the laws have already been changed. Like, they've already muddled the laws. It's not like this is not like, pre-gay marriage when like they literally didn't have the right. This is, no, they changed the laws in stealth. They're so powerful. They get laws changed in stealth. and it's the thing with gender ideology. Everything is the opposite of what they claim. So they claim to be marginalized, and it's like, no, they're actually the most powerful. They claim to be women, no, they're actually just men. Like everything is the opposite of what they claim. So I think that there is a real investment in keeping the censorship going, because the only way they were able to get away with all of this stuff for as long as they have is because it was done in stealth. So I work every day to try and bring attention to it. I email all of the different media organizations constantly. I'm assuming all of my emails go into like junk mail at this point. I'm assuming most of them have just blocked me because every few weeks they get media releases and whatnot from me. But I just keep doing it. I've got the receipts that they'll never ever be able to say, oh, we didn't know. It's like, yes, you did. You just ignored it. Like I would have thought that when the Australian Human Rights Commission put it in writing in a legal submission that human beings can change sex, that would be newsworthy, you would think. But I think that, again, I think there's a censorship because, certain people know that if that is put out there, that that's what the Australian Human Rights Commission is saying, and it is, how do you get people to trust that organization? Because what else are they lying about in the most obvious batshit way? I'll never trust them again. Or they'd have to do a lot of really good work for me to ever trust them. So I think that, I don't think it's not an accident or anything that there's this much censorship on it. It's all by design, and it's very necessary for that side of it. And for our side, it's necessary that people speak up about it.
Right. And it's very telling, when you have, like, it's strange that they want to keep everything under wraps if they think it's right to change the laws in these ways. Why then can't people know about it?
Completely. Like, I would think if they were really confident in what they were doing and their arguments and they were right, they would be screaming it from the rooftops. Because I'm confident in my argument. I'll tell it to anyone. And it's why I say I'll speak to anybody about it. I will talk to the devil himself. I don't care because I know I'm right. And it's very rare in life that you actually get to be really right about something, because most things are like on a spectrum, or like, oh, you have to go, there's got to be a level of humility with most things where you're like, I could be wrong. On men being women, we're just not wrong on this. Like Richard Dawkins has said, the uniqueness of biological sex is its binary. Most things are on a spectrum. Its biological sex is utterly unique. So to be changing that the most obvious truth. Like I did a tweet ages ago about how, this is even more insane than flat earthers, because for a while, like human beings didn't know if the earth was round or flat or square or whatever. But even during that time when they didn't know the earth, what the shape of the earth was, they actually knew that men weren't women. They knew male and female. Like we've just always known this. Animals know it. I just can't fathom why anyone is even believing it unless it's out of fear or financial gain for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or in the case of the activists or the trans-identified guys themselves, for their own personal gain, for their,
I don't think they actually believe it, but they like the narrative. But I don't think anyone really believes it.
Right, because how could they? Because our own bodies deny that. Like you said, we know that from without any other knowledge. Like you said, the earth could be flat, but we would still know that. You could be unaware that the earth is a globe, but you would still know that what male and female are just by existing in this world. We all have a mother. We all know. And, this guy, this Tickle guy, has he had any support? Has he been platformed at all in the media?
No, it's really interesting, actually. There is no support, or at least not publicly. I mean, he has the Australian Human Rights Commission supporting him, so that's a big thing. But in terms of, like, again, the media, no, like I would, because I know, like I am so sure in my position, I'm happy for it to be exposed. I'm happy to talk about it with everyone and everyone to know what's going on. So I find the secrecy very suspicious. Usually in Australia, like it's like, as I said, like the ABC, right? Any story praising trans people or the gender diverse or whatever nonsense it is. And they will, like, get to the point of like this, like, just blatant woman being like, oh, I get misgendered. Why aren't they writing these stories of like, this, yay, the fight back here, and this, this is so necessary for trans rights? Nothing. They do not mention it. There is no mention of the Tickle v. Giggle case in Australian state-sponsored media. The biggest court case on women's rights and trans issue that you could have, and nothing. And do have to say this, one of the reasons why the case is so big and important is that the implications of it are actually international. So there is a thing called CEDAW, and it's the Convention of the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and Girls. Whatever it is, it doesn't even spell CEDAW, but that's what it's called. And okay. This is a UN convention, and it's signed by 189 countries in the world. And how like sort of laws work and international law and everything is that when you sign these things and then you sort of got to ratify it, like put it into effect in your law. And that's what created the Sex Discrimination Act in Australia. It is just directly CEDAW. So CEDAW happened, it was like 1978 or 1979. Australia became a signatory in 1983. The Sex Discrimination Act was created in 1984. So because of that, so when they did these amendments in 2013, are they allowed to do those amendments? Because CEDAW is about biological sex. It's female, it's biological female. It's not legal sex or men can women. It is a document about biological reality. So gender identity not being in CEDAW means that the Sex Discrimination Act can't just put gender identity in how they have. So part of our defense is a constitutional challenge of being like, this shouldn't even be here in the first place. And if/when we win, other countries who are signatories of CEDAW and who have that in their law can then use that to protect women's rights in their countries. And this is for women's spaces, women's sport, just women being a sex class, legal sex class separate from men and that men can't identify into in law, really important. Also for breastfeeding, all those sorts of things that we're seeing happen. Just really important. And it's just like, if you need something in law for trans people, again, I just don't think there's such a thing, but it pains me. My soul dies a bit every time I say it at this point. But anyway, go and work it out. How to have stuff for trans people in law that doesn't take away rights for everyone else. And so it's going to have to be just their own identity is protected. Okay, fine. Anyone can think whatever they want. But it has to be stipulated that no one else should be forced to believe it, because freedom of belief is a thing. And so is freedom of speech. No one should be forced to call a man a woman or to call a man she. Like, gender ideology is in direct opposition to secular liberal society. It doesn't work. If you could find a way to make it work in law that works for everybody, and fine, cool, great. But say in Australia, the Sex Discrimination Act and just having the definition of sex in there, man and woman, would actually help and protect trans people, because all of the rights are actually sex-based. So if you're a man who wants to wear a dress or whatever in the workplace or something, it would say they said no. It would be on the basis of your sex that they're saying no. So the protections are sort of already there. You don't need gender identity muddling everything. I would say that, in fact, the reality of biological sex is even more relevant to people who are spending their life trying to reject that reality. Also, with having gender identity superseding sex in law, it only helps men who claim to be women. It doesn't even help women who are claiming to be men. They completely rely on their sex-based rights, because they're going to female sports still. That's a sex-based right.
Right.
If you had gender identity being more important than sex in law, women who call themselves men pretty much lose every single right, because they'd only be allowed to go into men's sport.
Mm-hmm.
They won't get into it.
Yeah.
Or they'll get, if they, the times like in a team sport situation when they do, they're going to get seriously injured. It's going to completely change men's sport, because basically suddenly men can't play to their full capacity anymore because there's a
Mm-hmm.
female on the field. So it just changed the complete nature of it. But so they would have no right to go and succeed in sport, which they still do under being able to go into female sport. And they use that right. They use their sex-based rights. So when all of these trans activists are going on about trans rights, no, they're just talking about men who claim to be women's rights. They're not even considering the rights of everyone else. And also the concept of legal sex or anything, like, what are the cloud genders doing? What's their legal sex?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Like, where are they, what sport are they going to? They need sex-based rights, because the reality of biological sex is actually still important to them, and the categories of it in being included in anything, because it's not going to be, oh, and here at the Olympics is the cloud genders.
Yeah. I have a
Right.
feeling the cloud genders may not be very athletic, but yes, but very,
Well,
very good point though.
yeah, the gender fucks.
Yeah,
Or
I heard about that one recently.
yeah, or the Tetris gender, Astro gender, all of these
Mm-hmm.
absolutely nonsense things. But if one of them's valid, then all of them are valid. And how
Yeah.
do you cater to them in society? You actually can't. The only way you can cater to people is on the basis of biological sex. It
Mm-hmm.
is the most inclusive way. That's the craziest part. Again, it's what makes me so mad, is that everything that gender ideology is doing, it's the opposite that is true. They're doing all of these things under the guise of diversity and inclusion, where it is the worst possible way to achieve that goal.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, how does it feel to have all this resting on you, given the implications, the broader implications for women's rights in this case? Is it, I mean, I would imagine there's maybe a little bit of it is exciting to think about that, or is it just really just heavy?
It's really stressful. It's just
Yeah.
really stressful. I don't
Yeah.
enjoy that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do sort of think of it in, as I've said so many times, I am so confident in our arguments and that we are just stating reality, and I know that to be true, that they will win eventually. So say if
Mm-hmm.
there was just this absolute nightmare that we lost all of this, even that would be, there would be then something that someone else could build on to go and win it eventually. So I don't go like, this is the be all and end all. In a way it is. But at the same time, the next woman would be able to fight still. And so it's just, whether is this going to be over soonish, or could this be, 5 years, 10 years? Oh God, I just can't even. If we're still doing this in 10 years, I mean, I'll be homeschooling my daughter, that's for sure, because I will not let her be exposed to any of this nonsense or put in a position where she's in a school bathroom with boys or sport with them. So it will make life, just keep making life difficult for everybody. But yeah, so yeah, in some ways there's like a lot of pressure, but at the same time, it needs to happen. Like, I wouldn't have chosen to be in this position, but you sort of go, okay, well, I just thought I was just creating an app for women. And if it was just working as it should, and trans activists hadn't gone after it, and no one would ever even known of me. Like, a few would be hitting our goals. We'd just be this small niche app that that women were just enjoying. Like, we weren't trying to change the world. It just sort of it's the Streisand effect of what they've done. It's like by going after women, and then all like women going, no, I'm actually going to fight back against this. It has created this situation, and then more people finding out what's really going on, and us being able to end it. So, I mean, there's so many like women who have been really brave and taken a stance, and like 9 times out of 10 they're winning. You just have to take the stance. So when like women contact me these days and like, what can I do? I'm like, I think the days of being able to be silent are over. I think of being like, going like, I can't speak up, it's too much of a risk. I'm like, well, it was for me too. So if you won't speak up, like, why are you just leaving it to other women? Like, it's destroyed my life in so many ways, and in other ways, like created, I don't even know. It's just a different path, I suppose. But I just think you just can't leave the standing up to other women. You just have to take the risk. And look, they can't fire everybody. Like, if everyone just stood up and went no, rather than being scared, the whole offices aren't going to be cleared out of people. They just eventually they just change the policy and go, oh, okay, yeah. And so you just take a stance.
I also wanted to ask you, kind of going back, a small detail that I was curious about. Did you ever find out how he got your number, the Tickle guy? You never found that out? That's so strange. It's like such a violation that he was able to contact you directly from what I've
Yeah,
heard.
yeah. I mean, I also would say literally no other user or potential user of the app has ever called or texted my phone about becoming a user or being like, I was blocked. Literally no one else. So that's why he became a person of note then. And it's sort of hard to talk about, like, just to try and make it clear, because when you're just trying to talk about like it all as quickly as possible or whatever. But I did not know this person, and I wouldn't have recognized him. Like, this person is irrelevant to me. I have no idea. He's become relevant, and I know him about him so much more now because of the case. But when he was just trying to go on Twitter, I knew nothing. And how am I supposed to know some guy has a gender identity? And why am I forced to care? Why does that even matter? It should not matter to me. That's his own personal identity. He is welcome to have it. If you want to call yourself a woman, that's what gets you out of bed every morning. All power to you. I don't care. I only care if you're trying to force me or anyone else to go along with that. Because it's just you can't force other people to believe what you believe. It would be like I'm not religious in any way. I am fine with people having religion in their lives. If I was being forced to believe Islam, I'd have a pushback to that too. It's no different. And it's like with Tickle, the only reason, like, it's not even a character assessment or anything. The only reason he can't go on the app is because he's male. It's the exact same reason why my dad can't go on the app. It's just maleness. Like, and you might not like that you're male. Work through that. But it is just the reality that you are. So yeah, I mean, I I I wish I didn't know this person. He does scare me a lot. He stalks me online. Like, so I've had him blocked for before I even knew him. So I block pretty much any trans activist that comes my way. I've done this from the very beginning, because back, when women could get kicked off for, the slightest things, I just, like, my way of trying to inoculate myself from that was I blocked everyone. As soon as, like, a trans activist would come after me, I just block, 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 block. Maybe I'd respond to one so that people would see that the response was there, but I wouldn't go and, like, interact with all of them. And so through having to put together stuff for this case, I was able to see that I had spoken to Tickle in January and February, like within late January, and then like the early days in February, that he had commented on stuff. He'd actually commented on a post that I had done about trans activists attacking Giggle. So he very much knew what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was intentionally going after you.
And then I just blocked him. Like, it wasn't like there was no abuse or anything like that. I just blocked him like I do with all people who are just trying to tell me that men are women. And the reason I know the date that I blocked him, because, usually you don't know, it's because he tweeted on the 3rd of February, 2021, Sall Grover, CEO of Giggle, has blocked me. And then he went on the app.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm.
And it's a pattern, it seems, that there are these what is that word? Litigious? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
People who want to sue everybody. There's a pattern among trans activists where they do that, because I know I was just talking to Graham Linehan, and he was talking about this Stephanie Hayden guy who's a trans activist who identifies as a woman, who keeps suing Graham and going after him legally. And it is, what's really depressing is that they can get some traction for that in the court system. That's what's really disturbing. And
Yeah,
like you
like so
said,
these
mhm,
vexatious litigants is what they're called. Like
okay, yeah,
when yeah, they're sort of trying to use the courts to intimidate people.
mhm, yeah,
Which that's it's you know that's not what it should be there for. Like the court is there. It's not a game. It is there for to right serious wrongs or to to just make sure everything is fair and just. And I just do not think that it is fair and just to say that people have to accept men as women. I think that is just a complete abuse of people's most basic human right to freedom of belief. Because that's that. The longer I've sort of been in this fight, like obviously I've come into this from female-only spaces and then by extension women's rights. But the longer I stay in it, I go like, what's the North Star? Like the star? What's the thing that I just think like what it really comes down to for me? And it's freedom of belief because that's everything and it's everyone. Like I think that people who call themselves trans also have freedom of belief. So in a sense, I'm fighting for Tickle's right to freedom of belief just as much as my own. He can believe whatever he wants. He just can't force other people to believe it. Nor can I. I can't force him to believe in the reality of biological sex. That's fine. But because that is the one that is real and true, that's what society has to be based on. That's what the law has to be based on. Then you can let people what they think in their own mind, or if they want to create like events or platforms specifically for trans people, fine. There's no problem with that. I'm going to stay away from it. It's one of the reasons why trans events actually happen quite successfully because we just stay away from them because we have no interest in them. That doesn't happen with female only things. And
right.
yeah, but I don't know about you because you've been in this I think for around the same amount of time I have. Like around
Uh-huh.
2020 was your
Right,
moment
right.
too, let's
Yeah,
say.
when I hear your story, it's like we're really on par, because I was
Yeah,
canceled, fired in 2020.
yeah.
So,
And
mhm.
do you like find that a shift has happened?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, so here in the US, the shift, I think, probably happened when the conservatives got involved, for better or for worse. They pushed the conversation into the mainstream,
Yeah.
because prior to that, no one really talked about it.
Hmm.
And that made it so that everyone at least knows that this debate exists. And then I think further than that, I think even people who are more progressive on the left, Democrats, those types of people, I think a lot of them have also realized that this is a lot of BS and this is like crazy town. So I've noticed a big change, but when it comes to certain things, it is just not. I mean, like with your case, it's just the hardcore, trans activists taking control or trying to take control.
Yeah, I think it's trying to, but it's the thing of we were always going to have these fights like to end it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So this is just part of the process. This is just part of ending it. And like hopefully in like God, hopefully by the end of this year, I'm just sitting here going like, oh, well, that was a long 4 years. Now let's return to normal life. And yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to deactivate my Twitter. And to never have to
Really? Are you going to deactivate when this
yeah,
is all over?
eventually, yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah, I'm
wow.
like, I'm here to end this.
Mhm.
It's not my career. This is
Yeah.
not what I want to do with my life. I
Yeah.
want to run a female only space. I want
Mhm.
this issue to be over. I really, there's actually one thing I do want to say. I want a lot of women to get that into that um, groove because when you have a goal of what something you want to do, you find the best ways to end this. Like I want women to be preparing for once the law is very clear and can do it, create the next girl guides. All of these women who've been fighting this, what's the next thing? Girl guides. The current Girl Guides, it's dead. It's done. Because you can never trust that organization again to make a good safeguarding decision. They have destroyed it. So there needs to be a new one. Someone has to create it. There needs to be more female-only rape crisis shelters, domestic violence shelters. Like, let's get all the planning in place so that it can all be done. Then let's just fight to end this as quickly as possible and move on with our lives with that. We cannot be having this fight for another 10 years. No.
Yeah. And, I think that's brilliant because a lot of times with different activist topics, they'll get so entrenched in fighting their battle that they almost don't want to win, because then what will they fight for?
Really, it becomes the career. It becomes the thing that's putting food on the table. No. There has to be a goal in mind. It has to be achieved, and then you move on to the thing you were fighting for. Like, there's no point just spending our lives fighting for female-only spaces, and then there's no female-only spaces. Like, go and implement what you're passionate about. Create more female-only sport opportunities, whatever it is. Go and do it.
And, regardless of what happens in your case, the parties that you can look forward to when you're done, when you're free, I'm sure, the celebrations, I can imagine, I hope, will be amazing. And regardless
honestly,
of,
I can't even pardon the hangover. As I said, I'm like marginally hungover today. We had 2 drinks last night while playing cards with my parents.
Yeah.
Going, oh, I really am almost 40. This is, I feel like I've been hit by a truck. But, oh yeah, no, I am going to celebrate like never before. And yeah, I'll be sick for a week. It'll be fantastic. And it'll be deserved.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. I just, I do try and picture it sometimes, of like that moment of hearing you won, and how that would even process through my body. I can't fathom it.
Yeah.
I can't fathom the level of relief. So I remember years ago when I did therapy, like, it was like just to cope with all the stuff that had happened in Hollywood. And I remember when I had the breakthrough and I physically felt weight lifted off my shoulders. I imagine it's going to be like that. You just physically go like, I didn't even know I was holding all of that in. I'll probably cry for a long time as well.
Yeah.
The
release.
There'll be and just because at the moment I just feel like I've got all the balls up in the air, just survival mode, just go, go, go. And then I'll probably, like, someone said to me recently, like, why don't you go and like to therapy for this? And I'm like, because I can't process it now. That will happen afterwards. At the moment, it's just,
because you're in it
to the finish line. Yeah.
Wow.
It would be like stopping a marathon to like have a picnic. No.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I'll deal with all the psychological stuff at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's there because my trust is gone. But my trust in like institutions or if anyone, I don't know how I'll ever vote again. Because the government could go and fix this. They know there's a conflict in the law. It's their responsibility to fix that stuff. Why are they leaving it to a private citizen to raise $500,000 to pay for it? They know it's there. They could fix, all they've got to do is go shift F7. Oh, definition of sex, it's back in. They know it needs to be there. How are we supposed to accept the Sex Discrimination Act has definitions for discrimination and act, but not sex? Nonsense. Wow. Utter nonsense.
And on that note, how can people support you?
So gigglecrowdfund.com is the crowdfunder. And yeah, we've got 6 weeks to raise like $200,000. Is go, go, go. But we're going to get there. While I'm very stressed about it, I'm also like, we're going to get there. And yeah, basically what I would love, and this is why like bringing as much attention to it as possible, I would love 50,000 people to each donate $10. So it's not this great big burden to anyone in particular, because the more people who know about it and support it is better than one person going and giving $500,000. Don't get me wrong, I'm not stupid. I would totally accept one person giving $500,000. But I want, I just, if I could have just tens of thousands of people giving $10, that would be fantastic, because that would just be the power of people, of everyone going, no, okay, this is my little way to stand up for my rights. And the only way I can repay anyone for their generosity is basically just work as hard as possible to get your rights back, which the legal team is doing. I mean, Bridie and Kath, I've never seen two women who work so hard. Like, just craziness. And they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant at doing this. When I read Bridie's submission when we were putting in all of our stuff and she did a big submission for it, I cried because it's everything that we have all been saying and fighting for put into a legal document for a judge to read. It's what we've wanted. And she's done it, and she's done it perfectly. She's listened, she's learned, she is an expert on this issue now. And she says she does that in her cases. She becomes an expert on what she's fighting for. And she truly is. And it's so inspiring and amazing to watch. And some people ask me, why didn't I get pro bono legal representation or anything? And I don't know. I just can't expect women to go and fight and do all the work to get our rights back and then they not be compensated for their labor. Like, this is their jobs. It's their profession. So I think that it's really important to pay women for their work. I'm very excited for one day when I get paid for my work. I don't get paid for any of this. And raising $500,000 is like a full-time job. You're raising more than most people earn in a year. And so, yeah, it's a lot. I'll get paid one day.
Yeah. Well, Sal, thank you so much for coming and talking about all of this. And I love your attitude. You're tenacious and you're so well spoken about everything. So it's really a pleasure to hear about it. And even though, it is so stressful and a burden, but there's no doubt that this is going to go down in history. And like you said, the Orwellian aspect of it is just, it's so mind-blowing. It's so crazy. But that is exactly why people will see that, you are right and how crazy this really is.
It is so crazy that people are going to be referencing, and people in law, other lawyers and cases will be referencing a case called Tickle v. Giggle. So you just have to laugh because you do. If you go crazy, if you didn't laugh and find the humor in all of it. Yeah. It's the name's so ridiculous. It's the name this ridiculousness deserves.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah.
I also want to say, I love your podcast, and anyone who's listening to this who wants to go, they should listen to your one with Helen Joyce. It was brilliant. And your one with Richie Herron. It was fantastic.
Oh wow! Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, Richie's incredible.
I could listen to Helen Joyce read the phone book. I love her every time she's on something. I'm just like, this woman is brilliant, and we're so lucky to have her. She's an expert witness at Tickle v. Giggle as well.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So is she going to be in Australia then in April?
No. It'll be via video link. But she knows why sex matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very, very excited. I'm very
well, that's good. Yes, I'm glad she's fighting in your corner for that. And yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Let's stay in touch. And so that, I want to hear everything, how it goes. And maybe we can do a part 2 in a couple months once some things have shifted and hear more. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Sal.